Performance Strategies Leadership Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Howard Gardner.
What intelligences do leaders have, and which intelligences do they need? So here's my answer. Leaders need linguistic intelligence and interpersonal intelligence. Leaders need linguistic because we tell stories, and stories are told in language. Remember, in the Bible, Moses couldn't speak well, but he had a brother, Aaron, who did the speaking for him. So if you can't tell the story yourself, you need to have a spokesman or a spokesperson or a spokeswoman to help you communicate your story. And leaders need interpersonal intelligence. They need to understand other people well enough to be able to put themselves in the shoes, in the clothing of other people, and to see what would work with those other people. Are there any intelligences which are less likely to be helpful? My own study indicated that having too much logical mathematical intelligence, thinking about everything in a logical or scientific or mathematical way, was not necessarily helpful for leaders. They try to make things too much like simply keeping score on some kind of a spreadsheet. I have an American example. There were two American presidents who were engineers, Herbert Hoover in the 1920s and Jimmy Carter in the 1970s. They were very ineffective presidents. They would rank low among all the American presidents. But interestingly, they were very good ex-presidents. After Hoover left office, he was defeated by Roosevelt. After Carter left office, he was defeated by Reagan. They were very good ex-presidents because they could figure out what should be done in a situation and do it without having to communicate to millions of people who would vote for them. Also, having too much thinking about yourself and who you are can get in the way. Intrapersonal intelligence can be a double-edged sword. I talk about Hamlet. You all know the Shakespearean play Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. If you ruminate too much, if you think too much about who you are, that can get in the way as well. I don't think Ronald Reagan had any intrapersonal intelligence. He didn't know or care about himself, but he knew or cared about his audiences. He was a movie actor, and he was very successful in influencing other people. He didn't have much intrapersonal intelligence. I think Obama, whom I had great hopes for, had too much intrapersonal and not enough interpersonal intelligence. He was too much like Hamlet and not enough like Winston Churchill, being able to influence others through stories. So let's say leaders change minds. What are the tools? How do leaders go about changing minds? What are the tools? So I wrote a book called Changing Minds. That came out, interesting, Frames of Mind, Forma Mentis 35 years ago, Leading Minds 25 years ago, Changing Minds 15 years ago, The Synthesizing Mind next year. So you're having a tour through my books and my minds. In the book Changing Minds, I introduced 7 ways in which leaders change minds. Those are the tools for mind changing. And in English, though probably not in Italian, each of these 7 R's, each of these 7 tools begins with the letter R. So we can think about the human mind, and it has all these different gears in it, and I'm going to describe what the gears are. The first one is reason, argument, discourse. One way in which leaders change minds is through an argument. this follows this doesn't follow from that. Reason. Descartes, the famous French philosopher of rationality, of logic. The second one is research. Argument is not the same as research. Research is data, findings, experiments, anything that you can carry out and find out what the correct answer is. So I'm sure that all of you, as leaders, take a look at spreadsheets, take a look at the stock market, take a look at sales, projected sales, actual sales. You look at the research, and if it shows you're not doing very well, you had better change course. And reason and research work together. By now, you've all figured out that I'm a professor, and professors live with reason and research. And as I will say in half an hour, I wish reason and research were more important than they seem to be today. Alas. The third R is resonance. Resonance means, do you feel connected to the person, the leader, and the ideas? Does it click with you? Does it feel right? Or are you alienated? You know, if I show you a picture of 30 leaders, as I will later, you will resonate. You will feel good about some, indifferent about others, and you really will not like some of them. They don't resonate with you at all. Why is the Mona Lisa so beloved? Because people feel they can relate to her. So those are the first three R's. Reason and research, which what professors like. Resonance, which is whether somebody feels simpatico with you. The fourth R is very complicated in English or Italian. It's representational redescription. What does that mean? It means that when you want to communicate something, the more different ways in which you can communicate it, through pictures, through stories, through music, through drama, through dance, the more different intelligence it evokes, the more effective. So here we are in Milan, and for people all over the world, Italian food means pasta, and these are different ways, different descriptions of pasta. And the more different ways in which you can communicate an idea, the more powerful it is. And of course, any of you who uses advertising of any sort, you might have a simple message, but you try to present it in as many different ways as possible. The fifth one is something that every 3-year-old knows, and that is, if you want to change minds, give people rewards, give them money, give them gifts, give them books, give them a free trip to Tahiti. You can change minds if you provide rewards and resources. The problem is, if you take away the rewards and the resources, the mind might flip back, which is why in raising children, how many of you have children or grandchildren? You use rewards, but you can't use just rewards because otherwise you become a slave of those rewards, and the child won't do what you want unless you reward them. The fifth R is, the sixth R is real-world events. A real-world event is something which you haven't planned for, but it happens and you have to deal with it. It can be a good event, like a windfall or beautiful weather. It can be a bad event, like a flood or a hurricane or a stock market crash, or, as my wife and I learned when we flew into Milan, 7 days of rain, like in the Bible. But you have to deal with that. And if you were going to have picnics for the next 7 days outside, that's not going to work. And the final R, which is the most difficult to deal with and to anticipate, but is very important, is understanding resistance. Most people who try to change minds, including me, devote almost all their efforts to the first R's, rewards, representative redescription, resonance, and so on. And we don't spend enough time thinking about the resistance. Why do people not want to change their minds? And the better you understand the resistance, the more likely you are to be able to deal with it. And two people who were very effective in my lifetime, Margaret Thatcher, Bill Clinton, were able to put themselves in the minds of other people and figure out why were they resisting and what can we do to dissolve or explode that resistance. So I've now introduced the two basic ideas that I want to deal with. How leaders operate, how well they tell stories, and how much they embody stories, and the tools or the levers which leaders have: research, resonance, redescription, overcoming resistance, and so on. And these are ideas which I think are true across time, not just from 1980s when I began to write, but over the centuries.